Hey, what's everybody? Welcome back. We just finished our chat. I've got Chad here again. I've got Dr. Renee Hawkins here with us again. She led us in our chat tonight on increasing engagement. And I think you summed it up perfectly, Renee. When we first got on before we came live, you said, whoo, that was fast.
Yeah,
Because it was moving. It was a great chat. I mean, obviously a subject matter that people were focused on and talking about. And I feel like it did what I thought it was going to do, which makes me happy. So let me turn to you first, Renee. How are you feeling right now after the chat?
I feel good. I'm tired. I feel like I missed a ton and I was working hard to stay
yeah,
up with everybody.
Tiffany Ott and I, we always joke and laugh because we'll, both be in the chat. We both have two very, very different experiences because there's so much going on. And she'll be like, oh, did you see the tweet about this? And I'm like, no, I didn't. But did you see this conversation? She's like, no, I didn't. Because there's just so much that goes on, these little conversations that get off on things and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun to see that. Do you feel like, based on everything you can keep up with, that people were getting what you hoped they were going to get out of this conversation?
Yeah, lots of good feedback there, and just talking about student engagement, key components.
Yeah. I agree. I thought it was it was great. Chad, you were excited about this topic. Did it live up to it? Did it live up to your expectations?
It did. I love seeing everybody's different takes on what engagement is. One of my favorite sidebars was talking about, like, how do we measure engagement? Like, what is actual engagement? And we were just talking about this just a minute ago, Jeff and I, and that like measuring engagement is also different from measuring mastery, right? Because like a student can be like super engaged in something, but not necessarily mastering the objectives of the experience, or the other way around. Like a student can master the objectives of an experience without being engaged as well. So like, I think it's really, really important that we see engagement and we see like these pillars and these points of engagement for kind of what they are as really solid measuring points for the potential for students to learn, right? Because we know without a doubt, like in our head, and I know you know this for sure, that like an engaged student is more likely to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also think we have to be careful, like whichever way we're kind of pushing this is like, well, if they're engaged, they're definitely learning, or if they're learning, they're definitely engaged, because like there are also students that are just really compliant that learn, and they may be learning a lot and getting A's or B's or whatever, but they may not like school very much. They may not be enjoying their experiencing. They may not be passionate about what they're learning about. So like if we can engage those students, that's when we can truly kind of let them be who they want to be. And I think you mentioned this on the pre-chat, like giving them some voice and ownership and choice in the learning process is a really great way to do that. So I think one of the biggest things, like the big like neon sign for me personally, as I reflect on the chat, was just like, we have to kind of norm what our definitions are of engagement, and also identify, how can we measure engagement? How do we know if our students are engaged? Because one thing I will never accept is a teacher being like, oh, I just know when my students are engaged. I can lecture, but when I look out, like I can tell, like they're definitely, because you just can't, right? Like there are other signs and other things you can look for, but like you can't just like guess and then hope that they're engaged. So, but yeah, no, it was a great chat.
Yeah,
I rambled for like 5 seconds longer than I wanted to, but
5 seconds, Chad. Really, just 5 seconds? That's all it was.
I apologize.
So, Renee, were there any tweets or anything that stuck out to you, or responses to, or like thoughts or resources, or the conversations that happened that kind of stuck out in your head? I know it's a lot to take in, like right now, but
there's
anything jump out?
I don't know if I'll get all of it. Someone mentioned pace. Like pace is important for student engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So I tweeted back, you're right. Sometimes we have to go slow in order to go fast.
Absolutely.
We're all about self-pacing.
Yeah, like we are. Yeah, we love
that. Right. But I think you bring up an amazing point here, because but I want to look like behind the fact that pace is a way to engage students, right? I think that goes beyond, you can go beyond that, like one more step and go, removing barriers is a way to increase engagement. Because a lot of the time, the reason students will disengage is because they can't access the content or the experience due to some sort of either cognitive or instructional barrier that exists, which is where things like self-paced mastery learning can come in and go, now this isn't a barrier, so you can engage. That's where things like universal design can come in and go, now that I can read this or have this scaffolding or can work with a peer, these barriers have been removed. Therefore, I can engage in the learning process and engage in this content. Because I think that's almost one of the reasons why engagement is such a pivotal thing to measure in a classroom. Because if a student is engaged, it probably means that you've differentiated, you've scaffolded, you've universally designed, and you've overcome their barriers to that learning experience. So now they can actively engage in it. So when engagement occurs, we can then assume that these other things have also occurred, like removing of these barriers, which is one of like the hardest things to do as a teacher, right? Is differentiate and personalize the learning experience. So when we embed our instruction and remove those barriers with universal design, remove those barriers by differentiating instruction for our students or scaffolding for our students or letting them work at their own pace, right? All of those things are doing the same thing, which is just removing barriers to learning so that they can then engage in the process. So if we measure the engagement, we can then kind of retroactively look and say, that's because we differentiated for each individual student's needs. So I think that's a huge takeaway, like a big, huge thing that I just love a lot. So I talked about it a bunch.
So any others, Renee, that stuck out to you?
There.
Any others that came on?
That topic.
Or anything you want to add, like onto what Chad said, or any others that jumped out at you, or things that got your attention?
People repeated the word relationships and communication, which are strategies that lead right into assessment capable learners. You know, students need to have clear learning objectives. They need that feedback. We have to be open and understand the barriers so we can remove them and close that achievement gap. Yeah.
Plus, students engage with people they trust, right? Which is where those relationships come in. Like, if teachers don't learn from people they don't like. That's a universal poster that every teacher needs on their wall. Like, and I'm not friends with every student, but if a student doesn't trust you or think that you're in their corner or think that you are the one that's going to be behind them and believe in them, right? If you look at Hattie's research, one of the biggest new things that they've added is teacher belief in students as an impact factor. And it's I'm probably going to get the number wrong, but it's like a 1.2 or 3 or something insane of just a teacher believing in student ability, right? When a student knows you believe in them, it's just amazing what they'll do for you.
Right.
So how about, Renee, anything that surprised you tonight? Anything that maybe you didn't see coming, or answers that were not ones that you thought were going to happen, or did it all kind of come together like you figured?
Well, I did mention to Mark that his response made me think when I threw out the how do you engage resistant or reluctant.
Yeah, what was his response? I don't know if I saw that.
He just said we need to think about resistant or reluctant. Like, there's always a why behind it.
Yeah.
So figuring out that why, breaking down the wall can help the students engage. Yeah.
Gotcha. Everything. I think it was Dave Burgess when we were talking to him. This is something I quote all the time, but like, everything students do is data. Everything they do. And if you're not taking that data every single day and doing something with it, you're missing the big picture, right? Like, a student being quote unquote crappy or in a bad mood or having an attitude or not wanting to do an assignment. Every single time that happens, it's data for you to use. It's telling you something. And if you're not taking advantage of that, and you're not trying to figure out that why, I mean, you're just missing that big picture. And I just think that goes so far in stepping back as the educator just for a moment, out of the moment of like, this student's aggravating me, this student's not working to their potential today, this student's whatever they're doing, stepping back and going, what is this telling me from like an objective standpoint? What is this student trying to say to me, whether they know it or not, right? And so I think that goes so far. And I love the fact that just to focus on the why, right? Because most students don't want to make their teacher mad. Most students don't want to disappoint the people that care about them. And a lot of times they don't realize they're doing these things. So if we give them the opportunity to like analyze and reflect on those things, they can overcome that why, and you can move on. But if you're reactive to that, you're not going to get the opportunity because you're not reading the quote unquote data properly.
So I want to grab, one thing I love about the Mastery Chats is that it just keeps going. So it's usually like well into Sunday that we're still seeing people like that go back through, find the questions and throw out their answers and stuff. Had one that just came in literally 3 minutes ago now from @Corey_D2019. Said question number 1, he said students comply when they are told to so they can get a decent grade, while the ones that are engaged fully and participate strive for their own ideas to achieve the highest level of success. Yeah. I just love that. Like it's that compliance versus actually being engaged and wanting to take that, wanting to learn, do that. So now I'm going to flip through because I want to see something else. I flipped over to Twitter really quick and saw that. I'm hoping I can grab another one, but okay, I might not get as lucky this time. But no, great chat. I thought it was awesome. Great subject. Did that. So Katie, it's okay. We all forgive you. And I'm glad that you're in this. So Katie, tell us, what's engagement mean to you? How do you engage those reluctant students? Just answer all the questions right now in the comments.
Right now, live on Facebook.
If anybody can do that, it'll be Katie. She'll just rattle them all off. I'm gonna see if she makes me a liar or not. Yeah. So great. I want to share next week, which is the 14th. We've got Mr. Ryan Sheehy, which is awesome because I just did his chat last night. He's going to be hosting the chat, and he is, of course, going to be talking about Be the One for Kids, which he knows better than most. That's the book. So super excited to have Ryan next week leading the chat and stuff. So really excited about that. Any other things, Renee, anything that you want to share is about? Oh, she had parent-teacher conferences. Oh, that's fun, Katie. Renee, anything you want to share, like from an admin standpoint, out to teachers or to admins and anybody, just sort of words of wisdoms when it comes to, obviously, you're passionate about this, about engagement and increasing engagement. Anything that you just kind of wish you just want to say? It's kind of a time for you to jump on a soapbox and be like, hey, here's my thoughts, my sort of final thoughts type thing for tonight's chat.
The world is your staff right now.
Wow.
And go.
Wow. So just going back to the chat, when we talked about environments, and someone said, it's not the quiet classroom, it's students talking, students asking each other questions, learning from each other. And I so agree with that. There's a consultant that says the person doing the talking is the person doing the learning. And so sometimes it takes us being quiet and letting the kids talk and learn from each other. And the productive struggle also came up, so important.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't do for students what they can do for themselves. Sometimes we need to ask them questions and let them struggle to develop that growth mindset and realize they can do it and feel that feeling of success. Yeah,
absolutely. We had a couple months ago. We were in a training with administrators, with principals in a district, and it was a district that has some teachers that are implementing the grid method, and so one of them actually mentioned to Chad and I that she had been observing a teacher that she thought was doing really well with the grid method, but she wasn't really happy, and not necessarily disappointed, but sort of disappointed that we're like, well, what's going on? What's she doing? And it's just their classroom isn't loud enough. Like it was too quiet. We're like, well, okay, like that's not the worst complaint we've ever heard. She just was like looking for that because she recognized that like when you have a class that's loud, that's not necessarily a bad thing if it's loud because of engagement, because the kids are working together, they're collaborating and stuff like that. I just thought that reminded of me when you're talking about it's not the quiet classroom. I'm like, yeah, she was like upset because it wasn't loud enough, and I just it's a fun thing. So Katie's going back and answering all the questions. I don't know. We're gonna look for those on Twitter, Katie. That'll be great. So make sure you excuse me, come join us next week for the chat with Ryan Sheehy. Super excited about that one. Renee, really, really appreciate you leading the chat. It was awesome.
Absolutely.
So many resources. We all got to go back to Twitter now and follow up on all this stuff and all the notifications that I'm sure your page is blowing up with right now that you have to go back and answer and stuff. So Really excited to do that. If you haven't checked out, now I got to figure it out. Hold on. I'm going to make you guys wait for 2 seconds because I can't remember what episode you were. Renee, do you remember?
It was 45 or 46. I'm
40. You should know that. I should
42.
know that.
I don't know.
I should definitely know that. I don't know why I'm putting it on you. 44. We were way off.
Okay.
No, episode 44 of Teach Better Talk. Renee was on there. It was an awesome episode. We had a blast. We had a lot of fun. She shared some really cool stories, some great advice, and it was really, really great. Oh, here we go. Katie says for answer to question number 3, she talks about culture. Culture promotes engagement. I would say my culture is open, collaborative, and not traditional. Founded on love. That sounds pretty much spot on. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Katie. That's great. Any thoughts on that answer there, Renee?
I agree. Someone mentioned family too. Students are more apt to take risks and feel safe when it's a family environment. So definitely
that culture is so important.
On love.
Yes, so important. So, well, awesome. Well, we appreciate you and you taking your time after a full day of work and hanging out and leading the chat, as well as everyone who participated after working a full day already. So we appreciate all of you. We'll be back here next week with Ryan and super excited for that chat. So we'll be live beforehand and after, like always. And until then, we'll just see you over on Twitter or anywhere else. So thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.